Before assessing them, one must first see them. So far, we observe only rather aggressive escalation, fairly clumsy and, frankly, unethical attempts to sway the position of the Trump administration and the U.S. president personally, as we saw during the Europeans' accompaniment of Mr. Zelensky to Washington. Our partners in the United States are increasingly recognizing the need to address the root causes of the crisis rather than supporting those who throw out a nice slogan about an immediate ceasefire while saying that a ceasefire will not mean continuing to pump weapons into Ukraine. This is precisely the kind of statement that French President Macron made not so long ago. It is positive that the current United States administration does not support this adventurous, confrontational position in favor of continuing the war, but instead seeks to address the root causes of the crisis, which I have said once again today, and which President Putin has repeatedly said. As for the reports that both the UK, France, and Germany want to work out collective security guarantees, we support these guarantees being really reliable. Here we have a very good example, which refers to the initiative of the Ukrainian side itself, as it was in Istanbul in April 2022, when the Ukrainian negotiating team proposed the basic principles of an agreement on ending hostilities and ensuring sustainable regulation. Among these principles were Ukraine's refusal to join NATO or any other military blocs, and confirmation of Ukraine's neutral and nuclear-free status. In this context, the Ukrainian side proposed, and our delegation agreed at that time, to develop security guarantees, the participants of which would be all permanent members of the UN Security Council, that is, the Russian Federation, the People's Republic of China, the United States of America, France, Britain, and plus individual countries, Germany and Turkey, as well as any other countries interested in joining this group of security guarantors. In that context, the Ukrainian proposal clearly meant that these guarantees would be equal. The security of all stakeholders, including Ukraine's neighbors, will be ensured on an equal and indivisible basis. This approach was supported by Russia in April 2022. This paper was initialed, and we were ready to sign a formal treaty following this initialing. However, as the President has repeatedly reminded us, Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister at the time, arrived and forbade his subordinates in Kiev from signing anything, demanding that hostilities continue. Had this not happened, I believe that much could already have been achieved to ensure sustainable regulation and protect the interests of all countries, states, and peoples living in our shared geopolitical space. Therefore, we cannot agree to the proposal that collective security issues should now be resolved without the Russian Federation. This will not work. As we have explained on numerous occasions, Russia does not exaggerate its interests, but we will firmly and resolutely defend our legitimate interests. I am sure that the West, and the United States in particular, understands perfectly well that seriously discussing security issues without the Russian Federation is utopian and leads nowhere. before assessing them, one must first see them. So far, we observe only rather aggressive escalation, fairly clumsy and, frankly, unethical attempts to sway the position of the Trump administration and the U.S. president personally, as we saw during the Europeans' accompaniment of Mr. Zelensky to Washington. On Monday this week, we heard no constructive ideas from the Europeans. As for the U.S. president and his team, yes, we see that they are genuinely, and not for the first week, but practically since taking office in the White House, engaged in diplomacy on the Ukrainian track, which means seeking mutually acceptable agreements that would eliminate the root causes of the crisis. This applies to any conflict situation and would ensure the non-resumption of conflict. Meanwhile, the Europeans are still trying, though increasingly less successfully, to keep the United States as a participant, at the very least, in providing weapons so that Europe can continue arming the Kiev regime with these weapons. Kodja Kolis, who is considered the EU's chief diplomat, the High Representative for Foreign Affairs, stated after the Washington meeting that the EU will not trust any agreements with the Russian Federation. Therefore, the EU will continue supporting Ukraine's armed forces and 33:39, promoting new sanctions against Russia, regardless of any agreements it claims not to believe in. But this is not diplomacy. This is a degradation of foreign policy methods, which, in essence, for the EU boil down solely to sanctions and, of course, outright theft, as seen with the gold and foreign exchange reserves of the Russian Federation. Thus, I see no European diplomacy, nor do I see it in many other areas.
$25 करोड़ गरीब गरीबी को परास्त करके बाहर निकले।
For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again.
The fastest news breaks.
Requested PM saying that look, you will have to speak to Putin and to Zelensky.
The biggest news makers.
The relationship with India is probably the most important bilateral relationship the U.S. will have for the rest of this century.
The capital delivered quite an election result today.
Expert analysis.
The million-dollar question today is how to stop this dance of death.
Ground reports.
I'm standing at the crossroad of the Kumbh Mela. Behind me are more than 100 entry guards.
Long-form interviews.
Exclusionary politics is reflected in Manipur case as well. You don't bother because this is a small state.
Deep dive into burning issues.
It's often said DRC could be the richest country in the whole world. It's because of what sits underneath.
Why exactly did the US topple the Sheikh Hasina government?
HD videos. We don't just break news, we break it down.